Good morning. I hope you had a good evening last night. I'm going to continue with my readings from Under God by Toby Mack and Michael Tate. I hope that you find value in this because one of the things that I am really into is patriotism and bringing our patriotism above politics. You're going to hear more and more from me about that over the coming weeks and months as the Hope Institute and We Care Partnerships continues to build community and continues to work with people all over the United States to realize how important it is that we as Americans come together in unity. Patriotism is the golden keystone in the foundation of our unity. And without that golden keystone, our American dreams crumble from within. We really need to remember that because patriotism is what holds us together as a country. It's a commitment to the values of our country. And when the values of our country begin to crumble, the country's going to crumble. And I think that's what you're seeing happening right now in our country. We need to pull back together. And what you're going to hear me reading and the introduction I did last night was just a taste of what this is about. It's about a lot of people who came together to build this country. And we must remember that a lot of people came together to build this country, but we also remember that a lot of people were decimated when building this country. The red people and the black people were very, very harmed by what the Europeans did when they came over here and built this country. That's not to take away what the Europeans were trying to do to build this country. We must remember that the Europeans who came here to establish this country were escaping a very, very real tyranny by a king who would not give them freedom of religion, who would not give them freedom of commerce, who would not give them freedom to bear arms or anything like that. It was under the tyranny of a king that they were living, and they had to go to war in order to break free of that in this country. Did they bring with them some ignorance and some cultural norms that caused some real problems here when they got here? Yes, they did. And they caused a lot of problems. The fact that they had to fight Indians rather than get along with Indians was a very awful thing. Could it have been handled differently? We'll never know because it's history. Even now, with indigenous peoples around the world, there are great battles that go on and on and on. One of the things we have to remember, though, is that around the world, there are battles going on that have nothing to do with Europeans because there are other cultures who still, to this day, do not give women rights, do not give people of color rights, do not give other religions rights. So we've come a very long way in the little 250 years that we've been in existence to assure the rights of people. We must not lose sight of the fact that we are probably probably the freest country in the world. So please, as you're watching our country try to tear itself apart right now, we must remember that we are more free than most countries in the world, and that even though there seems to be some still threads of racism in parts of our country, it is by far very little. And the fact that it's being politicized to gain power and wealth is pretty sickening in my heart. And so we just need to overcome that and move on because I think the truth of the matter is, and the honesty, if you really take an honest assessment of where our country is, and that's what we need to do as we're doing these readings and talking, we need to get over what's happening right now because I believe there's a lot of falsehood behind it. So I'm going to move on here. So this is reading Bulletproof, The French and Indian War, Account of a British Officer, July 9, 1755. The American Indian chief looked scornfully at the soldiers on the field before him. How foolish it was to fight as they did, forming their perfect battle lines out in the open, standing shoulder to shoulder in their bright red uniforms. The British soldiers, trained for European warfare, did not break rank, even when braves fired at them from under the safe cover of the forest. The slaughter at Monongahela River continued for 2 hours. By then, 1,000 of 1,459 British soldiers were killed or wounded, while only 30 of the French and Indian warriors firing at them were injured. Not only were the soldiers foolish, but their officers were just as bad. Riding on horseback, fully exposed above the men on the ground, they made perfect targets. One by one, the chief's marksmen shot the mounted British officers until only one remained. "Quick, let your aim be certain and he dies," the chief commanded. The warriors, a mix of Ottawa, Huron, and Chippewa tribesmen, leveled their rifles at the last officer on horseback. Round after round was aimed at this one man. Twice the officer's horse was shot out from under him. Twice he grabbed a horse left idle when a fellow officer had been shot down. 10, 12, 13 rounds were fired by the sharpshooters. Still, the officer remained unhurt. The native warriors stared at him in disbelief. Their rifles seldom missed their mark. The chief suddenly realized that a mighty power must be shielding this man. "Stop firing," he commanded. "This one is under the special protection of the Great Spirit." A brave standing nearby added, "I had 17 clear shots at him, and after all could not bring him to the ground. This man was not born to be killed by a bullet." As the firing slowed, the lieutenant colonel gathered the remaining troops and led the retreat to safety. That evening, as the last of the wounded were being cared for, the officer noticed an odd tear in his coat. It was a bullet hole. He rolled up his sleeve and looked at his arm directly under the hole. There was no mark on his skin. Amazed, he took off his coat and found three more holes where bullets had passed through his coat but stopped before they reached his body. 9 days after the battle, having heard rumor of his own death, the young lieutenant colonel wrote his brother to confirm that he was still very much alive. And he stated, "As I have heard since my arrival at this place a circumstantial account of my death and dying speech, I take this early opportunity of contradicting the first and of assuring you that I have not yet composed the latter. But by the all-powerful dispensations of Providence I have been protected beyond all human probability or expectation, for I had 4 bullets through my coat and 2 horses shot under me, yet escaped unhurt, although death was leveling my companions on every side of me." The battle on the Monongahela, part of the French and Indian War, was fought on July 9, 1755, near Fort Duquesne, now the city of Pittsburgh. The 20-year-old officer went on to become the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army and the first president of the United States. In all the years that followed in his long career, this man, George Washington, was never once wounded in battle. 15 years later, in 1770, George Washington returned to the same Pennsylvania woods. A respected Indian chief, having heard that Washington was in the area, traveled a long way to meet with him. He sat down with Washington face to face over a council fire. The chief told Washington the following: "I am the chief and a ruler over my tribes. My influence extends to the waters of the Great Lakes and to the far blue mountains. I've traveled a long and weary path, and I met to see the young warrior of the great battle. I was on the day when the white man's blood mixed with the streams of our forests, and I first beheld this chief Washington. I called to my young men and said, 'Mark your tall and daring warrior. He is not of the red coat tribe. He hath an Indian's wisdom, and his warriors fight as we do, himself alone exposed. Quick, let your aim be certain, and he dies.' Our rifles were leveled, rifles which, but for you, knew not how to miss. 'Twas all in vain. A power mightier far than we shielded you. Seeing you were under the special guardianship of the Great Spirit, we immediately ceased to fire at you. I am old and shall not soon be gathered to the great council fire of my fathers in the land of the shades. But ere I go, here is something bids me speak in the voice of prophecy. Listen. The Great Spirit protects that man," pointing at Washington, "and guides his destinies. He will become the chief of nations, and a people yet unborn will hail him as the founder of a mighty empire. I am come to pay homage to the man who is the particular favorite of heaven and who can never die in battle. This story of God's divine protection and of Washington's open gratitude could be found in many school textbooks until the 1930s. Now few Americans have read it. Washington often recalled this dramatic event that helped shape his character and confirm God's call on his life. Though 1,000 fall at your side, though 10,000 are dying around you, these evils will not touch you. Psalm 91:7. You have to wonder what's happening in our schools that we are not taught this in our history books. When I was in school, we said we pledged allegiance to the flag every day when school started. In my history class, the American flag was flown in our class. I remember learning about a lot of things. I don't remember learning that George Washington took 4 hits and did not fall. Why? You see, I believe in miracles. And it's unfortunate that I had to live 60-some years. Well, not 60-some. I started encountering miracles when I was younger. And I encountered a very strong miracle on a mountain when I came face to face with my Creator, and which brought me to what I do today, which is coaching and writing and bringing people together in community to try to find ways to resolve our issues. But why are we not taught the power of miracles in school? Why do we not believe that God is behind what this great country is about? You know, I asked last night if people would believe that there's a God. And it's a very interesting question that we raise upon ourselves. The idea of worship and praise God and that kind of thing. And a primary question that I have today that I've asked myself and I bring to others is when you look around at what we've done since we've been in existence and where we could go, and we know that there's many galaxies that exist out there besides ours, and many planets and many opportunities where there might be life. And we keep playing this game where we have great battles about religion. I mean, even now, there's raging wars that go on in other countries. You know, Iran and Iraq and all those places that believe, you know, when you look at the Islam stuff and all this stuff that says, you know, and back in the Crusade, and I'm not just saying that about the Muslim religion, but there's also the Christian wars, the Crusades, where there was great people slaughtered because of Christianity. And you have to wonder, what? Why? It's a very simple question to ask. If people as great as us can create the way that we create, right? And we're exploring this space. We're exploring space, and we're doing what we do. Is it not possible that people created as we were created in the image of some creator could not go and create other civilizations on other planets and other galaxies, and that those people would look upon the people who put us there as God, as some great and infallible being who created life on that far planet? Do you see my line of thinking here? Does it not make sense that there could be God, and that God is a creation like us? I'm just going to leave you with that thought. And we can stop asking the question if God exists. For certainly God does exist. And we were created in the image of God, and we need to stop having this stupid argument about whether God really exists or not. I think. I believe. All right, so this is a story of patriotism. We get patriotism above politics. What are you about? When people come to this country and they raise their hand after a little while and they pledge allegiance to the flag, because you still do, I believe, pledge allegiance to the flag when you become a citizen legally in this United States. I do believe you still pledge allegiance to our flag, which means that you become a patriot, that you understand the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the amendments. So here's my question to you. Don't we need to get back to the principles of our unity? Do we not need to get back to the principles of what founded our country? Do we not need to stop fighting the same ragged out arguments that we've been having about racism and this cancel culture thing that's going on? I'm going to leave you now, but I'll leave you with this and ask yourselves these questions at the end. Worship in the Capitol. Thanks to the constitutional mandate of Article 1, Section 5, Paragraph 3, I urge you to go read your Constitution. Every debate and every vote that has taken place in Congress from 1774 to the present is recorded in the public records. As a result of this mandate, the American people are able to read exactly what happened when Congress first moved into the Capitol. On December 4, 1800, just a few weeks after moving into the building, Congress decided that the Capitol would also serve as a church building. This fact is not only recorded in the annals of Congress, but also confirmed in the journals of various representatives and senators serving at that time. For example, Senator John Quincy Adams recorded on October 30, 1803, attended public service at the Capitol where Mr. Rattoon, an Episcopalian clergyman from Baltimore, preached a sermon. Just a week earlier, he'd written, religious service is usually performed on Sundays at the Treasury office and at the Capitol. I went both forenoon and afternoon to the Treasury. Thus began the long-standing and congressionally sanctioned practice of using government buildings as houses of worship. So I will close today by reminding everyone that we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We need to get back to that principle. And I would like to remind us that we need to get above politics. Patriotism is the number one thing that holds this country together. Without it, our American dreams crumble. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thank you. Love you all. Bye.